from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you guys on Tuesday night. And the Biden impeachment inquiry has begun. Now, I don't know how far this is going to go. I don't know if this is just an inquiry that might come up empty-handed. It seems to me, if I'm reading the tea leaves, that there might be more to this than meets the eye. But that's usually how politics works, right? But today, Kevin McCarthy announced the list of evidence and charges, potential charges, and everything that has been going on with respect to Joe Biden's malfeasance. And I want you to hear it.
You know, the months that we were gone and the weeks, House Republicans have uncovered serious and credible allegations into President Biden's conduct. Taken together, these allegations paint a picture of a culture of corruption. Now, here's what we know so far. Through our investigations, we have found that President Biden did lie to the American people about his own knowledge of his family's foreign business dealings. Eyewitnesses have testified that the president joined on multiple phone calls and had multiple interactions. Dinners resulted in cars and millions of dollars into his son's and his son's business partners. We know that bank records show that nearly $20 million in payments were directed to the Biden family members and associates through various shell companies. The Treasury Department alone has more than 150 transactions involving the Biden family and other business associates that were flagged as suspicious activity by U.S. banks. Even a trusted FBI informant has alleged a bribe to the Biden family. Biden used his official office to coordinate with Hunter Biden's business partners about Hunter's role in Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company. Finally, despite these serious allegations, it appears that the president's family has been offered special treatment by Biden's own administration, treatment that not otherwise would have received if they were not related to the president. These are allegations of abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption, and they warrant further investigation by the House of Representatives.
So this tells us one of two things. Either A, McCarthy's sitting on more evidence than he's let on, and we now know that this special treatment, probably the sweetheart deal in the special counsel deal, or this is all a deal, right? It's a deal because the Democrats are saying, you know what, the polls look horrible, he's underwater, there's not a shot for him here, and the deal's been made. And you see politics, especially like Washington-style politics or, you know, Trenton, New Jersey-style politics, it's all about a deal. Everything is choreographed. People make a deal. I'll do this if you do that, right? McConnell's a great deal maker. McCarthy's a deal maker. That's how you survive in Washington. So it seems to me that the Democrats said, all right, look, here's what we want. We want this, 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 and this. You let us get this, and we'll give you Biden. You go easy on us in the next term, maybe we even beat you with Harris. But at least we have a shot, a fighting chance, because they feel that they can't hold on to power with Biden. And the only reason I come to this conclusion is because you got to read the media. Now, the media has been all over the place with this, right? I just heard a video of Jake Tapper saying, you know, reading a Washington Post headline of all places saying that Hunter Biden made $2.2 million in 1 year and $2.4 the next year, and it mainly came from Chinese and Ukrainian interests. And Jake Tapper was saying This goes directly in contrast with what the president said back in the debate with Trump, when Trump said your son's making all this money off of China and Ukraine. So hold up, wait a minute. What's going on? Is it that Jake Tapper woke up and he decided to be a fair and honest journalist? Come on, of course not. It's that now the media's in and they're pushing the agenda that needs to be pushed, which is let's get rid of Biden. That's the only conclusion I come up with. But McCarthy formally announced the impeachment of President, or the impeachment inquiry. This is not an official impeachment hearing, but just an inquiry into it. Listen to this.
That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. It's exactly what we want to know, the answers. I believe the president would want to answer these questions and allegations as well. This effort will be led by Chairman James Comer at the Committee on Oversight, in coordination with Chairman Jim Jordan for Judiciary Committee and Chairman Jason Smith on Ways and Means. Now, I do not make this decision lightly. And regardless of your party or who you voted for, these facts should concern all Americans. The American people deserve to know that the public offices are not for sale, and that the federal government is not being used to cover up the actions of a politically associated family. Now, I would encourage the president and his team to fully cooperate with this investigation in the interests of transparency. We are committed to getting the answers for the American public. Nothing more, nothing less. We will go wherever the evidence takes us.
So there we go. And this again sounds very similar to, and I believe it, by the way, but it sounds similar to a speech that Chuck Schumer gave back in 2020. And I don't think I have the audio clip for you, but in essence, what he said was, it doesn't matter how many impeachments. If the guy keeps breaking the law, we're going to keep impeaching him. It doesn't matter if it's 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. If he broke the law, he has to be impeached. And if the next president breaks the law, we'll impeach him or her too. Right? That was back, I think, in April of 2020 that Chuck Schumer said that. Politicians always know how to say what they think is what the American people need to hear, especially on these big days where people are more concerned with what happened on last night's game or what's going on in their favorite reality show and how they prepare for work tomorrow and how they're going to care for their kids and, do what they have to do financially. But big news like this, it makes its way to them. You'll hear it on the radio tonight. You'll hear it on television tomorrow. It'll make some waves. And people will start seeing those tiny sound bites of McCarthy and Schumer and anybody else out there saying what needs to be said. And like I said, I do believe that McCarthy's accurate and he's correct here. This should have been done a long time ago, but he was playing it safe. He's a smart politician. He knows Washington, and he's a deal maker. So I'm guessing he's got something pretty good that got the Democrats scared enough to make a deal to get rid of Joe Biden. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about what is going on with the attack on kids and the attack on parental rights. It just gets worse and worse in California and really, honestly, throughout the country. We don't see it stopping anytime soon. We're going to talk about that next. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So there was a hearing today discussing all things crazy, and one of the crazy things they were talking about is some of the types of books that are in schools all across America and how graphic they are and how perverse they are. And Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana pointedly made some remarks by reading out of the book, and we'll get you the audio on that in a moment. But the first clip I want to play for you is Senator Kennedy in his questioning in this hearing with, let me see, what's this guy's name? I don't have it. Alex Giannoulis, the Illinois Secretary of State, and having this discussion on books and how difficult they are. And it's pretty graphic. Like I said, we'll get you the bleeped version of it in a moment. But this exchange is very telling, and I want you to listen close.
What would you do in terms of making the books available? Would you say anybody can see them, or they have to be in a special session?
Students who do not read books, like All Boys Aren't Blue, cannot learn what is appropriate.
I understand that.
They cannot learn.
I understand, but none of you want to answer my question. You come here and you say censorship is bad, and of course it's bad. But the obvious response is, okay, you heard the books we're talking about. Okay, we're not talking about Catcher in the Rye. So tell me what you want, who gets to decide. And all I've heard is the librarians. And parents have nothing to do with it. And if that's your response, what planet did you just parachute in from?
Parents, Senator.
Or what country, more appropriately? This is not China.
Parents, Senator, for all due respect, parents absolutely have a say. My parents were immigrants, came to this country. We never checked out books without our parents seeing what books we were reading. They encourage us to read books.
Mr. Secretary, I understand this is good for your politics back home.
It's got nothing to do with my politics. My bill is passed.
Of course it does. It has everything to do with your politics.
I'm here to...
But you came here with a problem, and I'm trying to understand the solution, and you don't have one.
We solved the solution.
Other than to tell us that if we don't agree with you, we'll be on the wrong side of history.
We solved the problem in Illinois. We fixed it because we
well, there are others you could work on.
Now, of course, this Secretary Alexei Giannoulis, the Illinois Secretary of State, is he goes on to say, he lets it out of the bag, right? He says, because some random parents, and I can't help being a parent and being a school board member and just caring a little bit that when you have people that are in power that are supposed to be, I guess in my flawed view, a public servant, and they go off the deep end thinking that parents are just random when parents are really your primary stakeholder, and the children. We have a real problem. And there's no better evidence of this than the new law coming out of California, this gender affirmation rule, where kids could become wards of the state under this new rule because they may not choose to acknowledge the gender that their 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10-year-old decides to choose that day. And this is a big deal, and that's why I want to bring in one of the big guns, somebody who follows what's going on in education very closely. Corey DeAngelis, he's a senior fellow at the American Federation for Children and a visiting fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution, and he's all over the place as a scholar. Corey DeAngelis, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. So, there's a lot already that I've put out there, but based on what you've heard, I guess it's obvious there's a movement afoot in this country, and it's been there for a while, where they're really trying to usurp the authority of parents so that they could teach kids whatever they want and weaken and soften the education system to meet a political end. Do you think that I said that fairly, or am I leaving something out?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. The left has infiltrated the government school system for far too long, and conservatives are just now waking up, partially because the teachers' unions overplayed their hand during COVID with Randy Weingarten's union, the American Federation of Teachers, and the NEA lobbying the CDC to make it more difficult to reopen schools. You had them fear-mongering all across the country. Chicago Teachers Union was deleting tweets saying it was racist to reopen schools. They had fake body bags. I was living in D.C. at the time. They had put fake body bags outside the D.C. public school offices, implying that if you want to open the schools, you're trying to kill teachers, which is totally off base. When everything else was opening, private schools were open, grocery stores were open, but families got this, what the heck was going on in the classroom? Parents who thought their kids were fine in good public schools, maybe because of the standardized test scores, started to see another dimension of school quality that's more important, which is whether the school's curriculum aligns with families' values. And parents don't want to send their kids to institutions where they're being indoctrinated to hate them for 13 years. They certainly don't want that. And they certainly don't want gender ideology forced down their children's throats for 13 years either. They just want the schools to focus on the basics, math, reading, and writing.
100%. So this movement, to me, it looks like it's careening out of control, but it doesn't look like it's winding down. It looks like it's picking up steam. I think it's just our side, or the side of the parents, the side of the children. There's people in the school choice movement that have been, kind of abreast of this for a while, but that's a minority. And now that I think more parents are involved, it seems like they're saying something, but I feel like they're winning.
Well, I mean, you would think these idiots on the left would start to learn a little bit after some of the election losses, like in Virginia with Terry McAuliffe, the infamous gubernatorial debate gaffe where he said, quote, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach." This was a former governor, so basically an incumbent in Virginia, in a state that went 10 points to Biden supposedly the year before. He lost to Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, on the issue of education by 6 points with education voters. That was the number 2 issue in the election. And so Republicans have kind of picked up the football and become the parents' party in some places. And the school choice movement has had a lot of victories as well, particularly in red states. We've had 9 states, almost 20% of the states in the country, going all in on school choice in the past 2 years. Meaning all families eligible to take their kids' education funding to the public, private, charter, or homeschool of their choosing. So we've had a lot of victories, too, particularly in red states. And I think so school choice is popular, obviously, among Republicans, Democrats, and independent voters, even though Democrat politicians who are big hypocrites on the issue send their own kids to private school and then turn, like Gavin Newsom, Joe Biden, and then they turn around and fight against less advantaged families in the same kind of opportunity. They're this ideology that the kids belong to the government, this communist notion that the money that's meant for educating them belongs to the government schools, and that parents shouldn't have a say. You have, and also in California, you have a lawsuit from the Attorney General, Rob Bonta. He's actually fighting so hard to usurp parental rights, the most fundamental parental rights, to try to keep sexual secrets about children from their parents. This is a case at a Chino Unified School District in California. They said, they passed a policy, if a kid changes their gender at school, maybe you should inform the parents and have transparency and be open and honest with the parents about it. But instead, you have the authoritarians at the state level in California trying to rain down on this district to insert themselves between the parent and the child, and that's not popular with your average voter. So it's going to cost them votes the more that they lean into this anti-parent rhetoric.
I agree. Folks, we're on with Dr. Corey DeAngelis. He's a senior fellow at the American Federation for Children. And I love the name of the organization because I've always felt like, the teachers' unions really should be children's unions. Teachers obviously have a role in their professional life, but who's looking out for the kids, right? It should be the parents, but apparently the teachers union is like the strongest thing ever. So it's good to know there's an American Federation for Children. I want to continue on this topic of the lawsuit against the school district. And a similar one happened in New Jersey. In Manalapan, where they did the same thing. So we're going to pick up where we left off. Folks, we're on with Corey DeAngelis, Senior Fellow at the American Federation for Children. If you want to give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ is the number. We're coming right back, and we're going to talk about all the crazy that's going on in California. Don't move a muscle. It's Rich Valdez, America at Night.
America, this is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
When a kid tells you that they're transgender, believe them. A lot of people will say that it's impossible for a 4-year-old to know if they're trans or not. But actually, that's not true. They can know, and here's why. From day one, gender is baked into everything we do. You either have a boy name or a girl name, boy toys or girl toys, boy clothes or girl clothes. So from an early age, kids understand the difference between boy and girl, and more importantly, which one they're expected to be. So it makes sense sense that if what they feel inside is different than what they're expected to be, then they might feel uncomfortable and they might want to talk about that discomfort. And we all know that kids are good at talking about how they feel. For example, mommy, I skinned my knee. Mommy, someone called me a name on the playground. Or even, mommy, I don't like wearing boy clothes. These are all similar feelings of discomfort that we can talk about to our parents. That's not to say that all kids will realize they're transgender when they're little. A lot don't. I didn't until I was 27, but I can't tell you how many people I've met that knew they were trans at 4 or 5 years old. So if there's a kid in your life who's telling you they're trans, please believe them. They know what they're talking about, and your support might save their life.
So that's a crazy TikTok activist saying that, if a 4-year-old tells you they're trans, believe them. I once had she was maybe 4.5, maybe 5 at the time, my daughter, and she graduated from preschool, and literally in her graduation program, they asked her, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, I want to be a doctor and a watermelon. That's a true story of my kid. If your kid tells you that they're a dog, are you going to start letting your kid wear a leash? I mean, this is absolute insanity in my opinion. Folks, our guest is still with us, Corey DeAngelis. He is the senior fellow at the American Federation for Children. And Corey DeAngelis, tell us, again, we were just talking about this, how some school districts have, the parents were involved. They've gotten elected as school board members. They went to the meetings. They had their protests. Their voices were heard. And they got buy-in from the school district to say, yes, if there's a kid that says that they're trans and it's my kid, you're going to let me know. And now you've got state attorneys general that are suing these school districts in order to overthrow their democratic decision.
That's right. They're subverting local control, and more importantly, they're subverting the fundamental right of a parent to direct the upbringing of their children. We have Supreme Court precedent on this. I mean, even as far back as 1925 in Pierce versus Society of Sisters, where the majority of the court famously ruled that, quote, the child is not the mere creature of the state. Well, some of these authoritarians in office in California would be wise to remember those wise words from the court back in 1925. So this isn't going to go well for the Democrats. I mean, it's just a really unpopular policy to believe that the kids belong to the government and not their parents. And then more importantly, they chose the weirdest hill to die on. I mean, this is about sexual secrets about children from their parents. I mean, I can't believe in 2023, we're at a point in America where you have people in elected positions in office actually choosing this hill to die on. I mean, it's just, they're picking on children, they're confusing children, they're picking on parents and trying to wage war on them. But I think it's partially because it's a deeply held belief among people in power that they believe that some parents don't know what's best for their children. They believe that the government officials, they're elitist. I mean, that the government should decide everything that you do. They believe that the government should pick the books for your children. You should be assigned to government schools. That's why you can't have school choice, right? Because it's okay for them to choose their kids' private school because they're smart elitists that can figure it out. But the commoners, the masses, no way could they possibly choose their child's school. But that's a totally backwards point of view. It's bogus. It's garbage because parents know their kids more than anybody. They care about their kids more than anybody else. They're in the best position with the on-the-ground knowledge to make the decisions for their own kids. There's exceptions, obviously, and that's when the government steps in. But they subvert the will of basically all parents from the get-go just because some of them might make the bad decision. I mean, it's a total invasion of privacy. And you know what? Government officials make bad decisions all the time.
That's facts. So, Corey DeAngelis, and I mean this in all sincerity, you're the PhD here, and I think you were generous in your response right now, saying that they're just elitists and they think they know better. But that's always been the case, right? I think that's been around for a long time. But this movement towards your 4-year-old is trans is not old, and it's very new. And I'm wondering what's changed in your best estimation. I don't really have an answer other than they're crazy and there's an evil push somewhere somehow. Why? I don't know. All I could think of is if you can get enough people confused, you can kind of lead them all to the government trough, and it's kind of like a soft commie type of push. But I don't know. What say you?
I mean, there isn't one easy answer, right? There's a lot of things moving over time, but I really think this has been a long-term trend of the Marxists taking over the higher education system, training the future teachers in the colleges of education. I mean, I did my PhD right in an education college at the University of Arkansas, but I had a small department where I did that PhD called the Department of Education Reform, which was actually pretty ideologically balanced. We had some conservatives and liberals alike, but that's the exception, not the rule. I mean, I don't know of any other department like the one that I did my PhD at. Everything else is basically, if you go into an ed school, this is 99% Marxist who really don't like conservatives, and so you have, a pipeline of teachers basically being indoctrinated in the system of higher education, and then they're being hired by the government school system. And so I think it's been happening for a long time, but I think we're just realizing it more now than ever. That's why more conservatives are running for school board now and winning, and why more parents are voting for candidates who vote in favor of parental rights in education, who don't want to keep secrets from them, and who don't want to take their children away for not agreeing with their child's confusion about their gender identity at a young age, like 4 or 5 years old. I mean, most parents know that this is ridiculous, and they know that they're in the best position to make decisions for their kids. And I think it's really been the school closures that were induced by the teachers unions, because they were holding children's education hostage during COVID.
Yeah.
They were trying to get, and they didn't just try. They ultimately received $190 billion in so-called COVID relief. Why? Because, they were closed, and they said, we're closed because we don't have enough money. It's always their excuse about everything. We're failing. We don't have high test scores because we don't have enough money. But look, parents got to see through Zoom school something wasn't right. And I think that was already happening. But now more people understand it. They're putting a spotlight on it. You got libs of TikTok sharing this all over social media. And people are paying more attention than ever. So that's one of the unintended benefits of the school lockdowns and COVID, that the teachers unions overplayed their hand. And it might be that the left has leaned into it further. It certainly is the case that some people in power, they think they've been so drunk on power for so long that they believe that no one can challenge them, particularly if you're in a deep blue state. They said they've quadrupled down on their anti-parent rhetoric. You think about Terry McAuliffe, who I mentioned earlier in Virginia, who ended up ultimately losing to Youngkin, the Republican, on education. Youngkin was already cutting the negative attack ads against him and putting them on repeat when he said, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach." That is, McAuliffe said that. McAuliffe quadrupled down. He kept gaslighting. He even had Randy Weingarten, the most hated union official, I would say, in the country right now. She stumped for him the night before the election. And a mom actually went on CNN the next day in Virginia and said that was the, quote, nail in the coffin moment for her. So, it didn't work out for McAuliffe, but maybe if you're in a deeper blue state, the quadrupling down and gaslighting can work in the short term, but it's not going to work in the long term. And one reason I say this, and I have this article up in front of me, I thought it was really interesting. Vox, it's a lefty outlet.
Oh, yeah.
One of their senior politics writer at Vox just put out the headline, quote, "The conservative push for school choice had its most successful year ever." And if you read through it, it's basically an endorsement of my organization and me as well, and how successful we've been over the past couple of years. So even the left is, you talked about a little bit earlier that, maybe the left is gaining steam and encroaching on our rights. I think they're trying, but even the left is admitting at this point that when it comes to electoral outcomes, it's a political winner to support parental rights for the most part. Right. It doesn't always work, right? Like Gavin Newsom's in office, right? But for the most part, if you look at the statistics, the people who oppose parental rights are facing consequences.
Corey DeAngelis, I think you make a good point. And just to circle back, because I've heard some commentary that I don't know if there's scholarly research to support it or not, perhaps you do, that the work of Alfred Kinsey and Daniel Carlton Gajusek and these guys that believe that multi-generational sex should be normalized was kind of taboo back in the 50s, and here generations later that this push towards having kids define themselves as trans as early as 4 years old and whatnot is really a push to normalize minor attracted persons being accepted in society, being that you can identify as such because you can identify as anything you want.
It's crazy we even have this term, minor attracted person,
I'm with you
right?
on that
Like,
one.
where have we come? Why are we trying to make pedophiles feel better about themselves, right? That part of the social feedback mechanism to incentivize people to do the right thing and not the wrong thing is to judge people for doing the wrong thing, right? So
100%.
it's crazy that we're at this point, and I think it's really going to backfire on the left in a big way. Another article that came out recently after the midterms, there wasn't really a red wave or a blue wave, but there was a school choice wave. School choice proponents did really well last year, 76% of them winning their races in 2022 as far as candidates running for office at the state level. But the New Yorker magazine even put out a quote. The headline was from a lefty that was super upset about how things were going. She said, quote, education freedom candidates fared depressingly well in the midterms. So the more that the left the more that the left does this, we should fight against it, right? We should obviously fight against it. And also on the board of Liberty Justice Center, and we just intervened in that case in California where the Attorney General is trying to subvert parental rights.
Well, I want to talk about that, but I want to do it in the next segment, so I'm going to pause right here if you don't mind. Folks, we're on with Corey DeAngelis, Senior Fellow at the American Federation for Children, and we're going to get into that California stuff, and I appreciate everything you said because I got to tell you, sometimes I'm born in Brooklyn, but I live in Jersey, and around here, things are crazy. So it's nice to hear that we're having a lot of wins, and I appreciate your enthusiasm. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with Corey DeAngelis. He's a senior fellow at the American Federation for Children, and he's on the board of Liberty Justice. And they've taken this California nonsense to task. Corey, tell us all about it.
Yeah, just a reminder, the California Attorney General is trying to subvert the will of parents and take away their most fundamental rights by fighting to keep sexual secrets about their children from them. I mean, it's just totally blasphemy that this is actually happening. Chino Unified School District passed the policy to notify parents about their child's changing gender at school. I mean, it's a pretty basic policy to have transparency. I mean, this is bad in a couple of ways. One, they're trying to keep secrets from parents, but two, the state is also subverting local control. I mean, they're not allowing local, and Chino is just the first district to do this. There's others as well that may get involved in the case, but they just voted on yesterday night 4-0, the school board at Chino Unified, to partner with my organization, where I'm on the board, called Liberty Justice Center. We're also famously known for the 2018 Supreme Court case that we won, the Janus Supreme Court case against public sector unions, not allowing them to compel members to pay dues because it was infringing on their free speech rights. So basically every state, in a sense, is kind of like a right to work because of that victory from Liberty Justice Center. Now we expect to win in California too, and we're standing on the side of parents. And I'm glad that Chino Unified overwhelmingly 4-0 voted to partner with us.
Outstanding. So what do you think the next step is? Because, I mean, I know they've got this new rule where they're saying kids could become ward of the state. And I remember a couple of months ago there was some talk about this when it was in the California Assembly. when they were saying that, a guidance counselor could, in effect, say, I don't know if they ended up doing it, but they said the kid could say, oh, I'm trans. And they could say, okay, do you want to go home today? You don't have to go home today. And they could, take custody of these kids. And it's kind of crazy what they're even considering.
I mean, it's insane. And these people who like big government policies operate from the assumption that government is perfect and benevolent and they could never make bad decisions. It happens all the time. And so CPS officials even can make bad decisions. So who gets to choose who's in the best position to make the choice? It's obviously the parent. They love their kids more than anybody else. And, that bill in California to make children wards of the state, I think it still relies on Gavin Newsom's signature. If he signs that into law, he'll basically be signing his chances at president away if he ever decides to do so. And it seems like he's kind of toying around with that idea. And this will be cut as a naked campaign against Gavin Newsom nonstop. I mean, and the policy is just ridiculous, right? If you're in a custody dispute, they shouldn't take into account whether you're affirming a young child's gender as to whether you're going to get the kid or not, whether the dad or mom is going to get custody of the kid. I mean, you can make the opposite argument, right? That if you are confusing your child by saying they're the wrong gender at a very young age, maybe you should be less likely to get the child. I mean, you could go both ways, but
right.
If anything, they shouldn't take that into consideration.
Corey DeAngelis, let everybody know how they could follow the amazing work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, you can follow me at DeAngelis Corey on Twitter, which is now called X. Thank goodness for Elon Musk. But yeah, it's at DeAngelis Corey. I do a lot of updates there. But you could also help us in the fight for education freedom by signing the Education Freedom Pledge. And the way that you do that is educationfreedompledge.com, or for short, you can just do edfreedompledge.com.
Fantastic. Check them out at edfreedompledge.com. Corey DeAngelis, I want to thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks for staying up late.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. Folks, we're coming right back with your calls and more. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. So busy day today here on the show. We've got, of course, the impeachment inquiry into Joe El Baboso Biden. And we also have a whistleblower that says that the CIA and officials within the CIA were paid to change the view that COVID originated in a Wuhan lab. The allegations, which stemmed from a seemingly credible source, quote unquote, require Congress to investigate how the CIA handled its investigation into COVID's origins, according to lawmakers. Now, this is according to justthenews.com. And what I find interesting is, why on earth is the CIA investigating the Wuhan stuff? And I guess there's a legitimate reason somewhere, but I wouldn't have imagined that CIA would be the, our spy agency would not be the investigatory agency leading the charge on this. But most of the officers on the CIA's COVID discovery team concluded that the coronavirus originated from a laboratory in Wuhan, but they changed their positions after receiving a monetary incentive. And that's according to a senior-level CIA agent in his testimony to Congress. So this whistleblower now informs that the Coronavirus Pandemic Subcommittee and the Intelligence Committee that this is what happened at the end of the CIA's COVID review. And 6 of the 7 members of the team believed that there was enough evidence to say it came from the Wuhan lab, but they ended up changing their minds after there was a little bit of a monetary incentive. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but right now, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be with you this Tuesday evening. If you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, feel free to give us a call, 833-482-5337. And Speaker McCarthy announced today that he was commencing an impeachment inquiry to Joe Biden. Check this out.
That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public.
Now, the public has lots of questions, right? And I'm sure that the committees are going to continue to unsurface lots of information on that. But this isn't the only one of Biden's problems, right? Biden has a bunch of problems, whether it's the border, inflation, the economy, as well as all these new stories that are coming out, right? A new story came out today about the CIA whistleblowers saying that they believe that COVID started in a Wuhan lab, and that doesn't look good for Biden. And then there was a story a couple of days ago, I think we talked about it briefly on Friday, where an appeals court ruled that the government likely violated the First Amendment rights of Americans in their vaccine misinformation campaign. And I think this is a big deal. Like, it's a big deal when a federal court says, hey, you're violating the Constitution. You can't do that. So I want to get to the bottom of that and the Missouri versus Biden decision with Mark Chenoweth. He's the president and general counsel at New Civil Liberties Alliance. Mark Chenoweth, welcome, sir.
Good to be with you, Rich.
You bet. So let's dig into this. Tell us about the case, how it came about, and of course, we'll get into some of your analysis on it as well.
Sure. Well, the case came about originally. The attorneys general of Missouri and Louisiana filed suit against the Biden administration because they recognized that what was happening not only to their own social media posts, but also to the social media posts of folks in their jurisdictions, was that they were being, reduced in different kinds of ways. They were being either deplatformed. You had folks getting thrown off, or you had folks who were getting throttled, or all these other terminologies that are used to basically ways of censorship. And I think folks originally thought this was happening as a result of the private conduct of the various social media platforms. But I think the attorneys general had an inkling that maybe there was some state action behind this as well. And the New Civil Liberties Alliance got involved because there were several private plaintiffs that were interested in being part of the lawsuit as well. The state AGs couldn't represent private plaintiffs, and so the New Civil Liberties Alliance had a different lawsuit that we had been working on that was somewhat similar, and so they immediately thought of us to come into this lawsuit and join them in the lawsuit against the federal government. So we represent Doctors Jay Bhattacharya and Martin Koldorf, Aaron Cariotti, and Miss Jill Hines in the Missouri v. Biden lawsuit.
Now, break it down, because I think some of the headlines can be a little misleading, saying that, the government likely violated the First Amendment rights of end users. Is it likely? Did they do it? Did they not? I'm not sure how to come down on that.
Sure. So the reason why some of the news articles talk about the likelihood is because this is at the preliminary injunction stage. And so the legal question that you have to establish in order to get an injunction is you have to prove that the government more likely than not was guilty of this conduct. And so that's why they talk about it in terms of likelihood. But both the district court and the Court of Appeals looked at the evidence and said, look, the evidence shows, and the district court was even stronger in this, but even at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, the evidence shows that the government was censoring people. And in other words, it wasn't the independent actions of Facebook and Twitter and other social media platforms. It was the government reaching out to these social media platforms and telling them, hey, you need to take that down. And when they didn't take it down, calling back and saying, hey, I thought we told you to take that down. And when they still didn't take it down in one or two cases, saying, getting really angry with them and saying, what's it going to do? What's it going to take to get you to take this down, kind of thing. And it was very coercive kinds of actions on the part of certain folks at the White House, like Rob Flaherty, certain folks at the Centers for Disease Control, the U.S. Surgeon General, even Jen Psaki from the podium there at the White House. There was lots of this sort of legal terminology, significant encouragement toward the platforms to take down certain kinds of things they didn't like.
So what type of relief are you seeking? We've had Dr. Bhattacharya on the show. He's terrific and has told us his story of how they, kind of wiped him out. And obviously not the same situation, but the same situation in many ways. What happens now? I mean, they can't turn back the hands of time. I guess they could say, yeah, they were wrong. But is there? How do we punish the bad guys?
Well, that's a good question, Rich. And in terms of punishing the government, it's hard to do. But what we can do is we can get an injunction that prevents them from doing it again. And so that's what the form of relief that's being sought here is to essentially put them on notice that your conduct is unconstitutional. You can't do this. And then if they try to seek, if they try to hide behind immunity in the future, it'll be a lot harder for them to do that because there will already be a court ruling saying that your conduct is unconstitutional. You've been put on notice. And so if they continue to do it, then there's an opportunity to potentially go after some of these individuals, not in their official capacity, which this lawsuit does, but to go after them in their individual capacity for the illegality that they're involved in. And so that's the point of this lawsuit, is to hopefully put them on notice, get them to stop their illegal conduct.
Makes sense. And I got a couple of follow-up questions, but I'm going to hold them for right after the break so that we can take a quick pause here and give out the phone number. So, folks, I want to remind you that we're on with Mark Chenoweth. He's the president and general counsel for New Civil Liberties Alliance. And our phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So on Friday, a U.S. appeals court ruled that several government entities, including the White House, the FBI, the Surgeon General, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, likely violated the First Amendment by pressuring social media companies to moderate their content on what they called misinformation regarding vaccines. This decision on Friday is from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, saying that the government actors, quote, likely coerced or encouraged, end quote, social media companies to moderate their content, affirming a decision by a lower court with respect to the White House, the FBI, the CDC, and the Surgeon General. That's reported in The Hill. And my question for our guest, and our guest, by the way, is Mark Chenoweth. He's the general counsel and president at New Civil Liberties Alliance. And my question is, and you kind of alluded to it, which was, if you succeed, and it seems like you will, the judges are like, yeah, these guys are out of control, no problem, it's on the record, don't do it again, and potentially go after these other people civilly. Does this not mean, it means nothing, right, for the actual social media companies?
Right. So we didn't sue the social media companies themselves, and the court recognized that the plaintiffs weren't challenging the social media platforms' content moderation policies because if they're truly acting on their own, then the First Amendment doesn't apply to them. They don't have to.
Right, they're private.
They're private, but that's not what was happening. They weren't acting on their own. Here we had the government's unlawful efforts influencing the enforcement of those policies, and that's what the court was very keen to pick up on. And in fact, Judge Dowdy called this arguably the most massive attack against free speech in United States history and akin to an Orwellian ministry of truth. So if that doesn't get your attention, I don't know what will. This is a very serious violation, systematic violation of the First Amendment being perpetrated by the Biden administration in a coordinated censorship campaign against the American people. And they were doing it because they didn't like what people like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya were saying about COVID. They didn't like what some other people were saying about the Hunter Biden laptop. There were just certain topics that they wanted to shut people up on, and they did so.
Yeah, and the reason I ask about the social media companies is because when the Twitter files were released through Matt Taibbi, the sense I got was that there was a lot of incestuous relationships, and by that I mean a lot of government people that left government and went right into social media to work as their general counsel and whatnot. So I feel like, okay, so you slap on the wrist at the White House, but then you still have some of these same actors that are in the same place. And I'm asking for my own point of personal privilege. I shared a Hunter Biden story on Instagram about a week ago, maybe 10 days, and Instagram was like, you can't share that. And it was like an article in Breitbart News. And I thought, and I complained, and they restored my access. I think I'm still being like shadow banned or whatnot. But the point is, how do we stop them, or can we?
Yeah, great question, Rich. And it's going to be more difficult to stop these companies. In some cases, there may be opportunities to do it with litigation if they're violating the contractual terms that they have with the folks who use those platforms. In other cases, we may have to switch to other platforms that are willing to honor folks' First Amendment rights. And then there may be some legislative solutions as well. You already have jurisdictions like Texas that have talked about, saying, look, they're not going to allow these companies to censor this kind of information on any kind of discriminatory basis. And we may need a sort of new civil rights legislation that doesn't allow companies to discriminate based on viewpoint. But we're not there yet, and frankly, I'd like to see how these companies behave when the government isn't in their business and threatening them all day long.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that's something I've thought about long and hard. I worked in government once, and I was treated differently because of my political views. And I remember I didn't have a lot of options. I tried to talk my way out of it, and eventually I just went and I said, these people are just treating me the wrong way. And they were like, were they doing it based on race or this or that? And they were like, nope, politics isn't a protected category, so you're on your own.
Right.
And I always, it always stuck with me that I think that would be the fix here for really allowing the First Amendment to flourish, is to include viewpoint in those protected categories. What's the likelihood or reality of something like that happening?
Well, I don't know that there's a likelihood of it at the federal level anytime soon, but that may not be necessary. If there's just a couple of states out there that are willing, and Texas has been taking the lead on this so far, to say, look, companies, you can't treat our citizens this way. You can't operate in our space. You're the new public square. You're a kind of utility or a common carrier of sorts. And just as we don't allow hotels, for example, to discriminate and say on the basis of race or what have you, you can't discriminate against the content on your site for these forbidden reasons. And that's not to say that they wouldn't continue to have control over most of what's up there, but if they're going to choose to moderate what's on their site, they can't do so in a discriminatory way. But I just want to stress again, I don't know that that's the problem, because we've seen, the vast network, just 17 different agencies were involved here in terms of suppressing or reducing speech in a very coordinated way. And the Fifth Circuit upheld a preliminary injunction against a handful of those, and let's see what happens now. I think the Twitter files were very helpful in exposing this. This lawsuit has been helpful in exposing the extent of what's going on here, and I think if we can get the government to back off and stop violating people's First Amendment rights, then that'll create the space for the companies to do the right thing, and then we'll see whether they do or not.
Right, and I guess it also allows them to compete, right? If there's Truth Social and Rumble and other platforms that are willing to take free speech for what it's worth, and people start to make those decisions to go with one versus the other, they may decide to say, all right, let's be more competitive and be respectful of free speech. So that's a possibility. I just have very little faith when it comes to some of these companies. Now, I want to know a little bit more about the organization, New Civil Liberties Alliance, the one where you are the general counsel and president. This is a great case and amazing work that you're doing. What else are you guys up to?
Oh gosh, we're suing the government on so many different topic areas. We have lawsuits against the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau over the unlawful way in which that agency is funded through the Federal Reserve. We have a lawsuit against the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Marine Fisheries Service over its effort to try to force boats in the Atlantic Ocean to pay for at-sea monitors. So it's almost like having to pay for a cop to ride alongside you in your car to write you tickets for speeding. It's a very weird situation with that particular agency. We have a lawsuit against the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms over the bump stock ban that was actually put into effect originally during the Trump administration, where they're trying to pretend that bump stocks are machine guns, which they're not. And our particular concern with that is you can't have federal agencies rewriting statutes that Congress wrote. That's Congress's job. And
right.
So we're suing the ATF over that. But really we're 6 years old this month at the New Civil Liberties Alliance.
Happy birthday.
Founded. Thank you. We were founded by Philip Hamburger, who's a law professor up there in New York City and at Columbia Law School. And our goal is to put constitutional guardrails around the actions of these federal agencies. So when they do things like try to force you to go through an administrative proceeding instead of going against you in federal court, and they take away your jury trial rights, and they take away all the due process that you would ordinarily have in a real court, then we're suing to stop that. We're saying, look, if an agency wants to enforce something against you, it has to do so in a real court with a real jury and so forth.
Let everybody know the website really quick, Mark.
Sure, nclalegal.org, nclalegal.org.
Folks, Mark Chenoweth, president at ncalegal.org. Check him out, support him, do what you can. Mark, I want to thank you for joining us. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Rich.
You bet. All right, folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. There's more to come.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And there's a shortage of mental health services for teens, forcing parents to take desperate measures. That's the headline from PBS. And the COVID-19 pandemic revealed that there was a lot of strain on mental health for young people, mainly because more people were depressed or anxious or whatever and what have you. And I think it's a supply and demand issue, to be quite frank. But it's still a problem that continues. And I want you to hear a clip from this report.
The goal of inpatient residential programs is to provide intensive treatment so that kids can return home. A 2007 study found the average length of stay varies by program, from less than 2 months to more than 2 years.
Children are children. They are developmentally, physiologically, psychologically very different.
Dr. Purva Grover chairs pediatric emergency medicine at Cleveland Clinic. She says more families are showing up in ERs because the supply of specialized mental health services has not kept up with demand.
We are not psychiatrists. We are not the specialists of mental health and the long-term consequences, treatment, diagnoses. We are simply what we call crisis management.
Last year, 42 states had a severe shortage of child and adolescent psychiatrists. Nationwide, the number of residential treatment facilities for children fell 30% from 2012 to 2020.
You know, September is Suicide Prevention Month, and when you see that there's a shortage of mental health services for teens or anybody else, quite frankly, it's a concern, because that's how you get to that level where you hurt yourself, is when you don't have that access. I shouldn't say the access, but when you don't realize you have a mental health issue, and then if you do realize it and you don't get the help you need in the right time frame. So I wanted to talk about this with a frequent flyer on our program, one of my favorites, Jill Robin Payne. She's a psychotherapist and an author, and she's with us right now. Jill Robin Payne, welcome.
Hey, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Always a pleasure to talk to you. This is my therapy time. I love it. I got my feet up on the couch. Okay. So let's dig into this a little bit, because I know that this is something we've actually talked about a little bit in the past, which is not having enough mental health professionals available to kind of meet the demand. And I hear it from a lot of people. I know people that are like, hey, I tried this app, and the person on the app wasn't really good for me, so I went with somebody else, but I couldn't get an appointment with somebody else because they were booked and they're not taking new people, and it just seems to be an ongoing thing. And from your perspective, as somebody that's in practice as a psychotherapist, how does it look for you?
That is what's going on, and a lot, of course, was contributed or exacerbated because of COVID-19, but it's been happening the last 10, 20 years. And so it's really good if you want to be a psychotherapist. That's the thing to be, because you will never be without clients. So what really needs to happen, and we need to get more involved with our community, because I was really thinking about this, and there's a big disconnect in our world. And so I was talking to just friends, and when we were younger, I'm not going to tell you my age, Rich, but you could keep 35. Your door. You could keep your door unlocked. It didn't matter what ethnicity you were, where you lived, what city you lived in. 30, 40 years ago, actually more, 50 years ago, you could leave your door unlocked and your neighbor would watch it.
Right.
And communities took care of their own. And so that's what's happening. And to me, that's where we really need to start, and in our communities. And instead of doing things online, I've got clients coming to me, Rich, and they'll say, Jill, I'm coming to you because I can see you in your office. I was seeing this person online. It just didn't do it. I was seeing this person on this app. It just wasn't doing it. And so a lot of the kids, they really want more face-to-face. And there is a shortage because people found out that during COVID, you could just stay home and do Zoom or, telehealth. And that's what's happening. So there's a disconnect, and we just need to get more connected. Be proactive.
Well, I love your enthusiasm, but I think this is a monumentous challenge, right? I think first of all, I think it's important, just like me right now with my feet up on the leather couch. I think most people want to have that. I guess there's some people that are busy that want to do a phone call or would prefer some face-to-face video action. But I could imagine somebody saying, I'm stressed out, had a crazy week, can't wait to see my therapist, and I don't want to do it from my car. Or, from my living room where my house is going upside down and my dog's running over here, So I could see how people find a reprieve in that moment. But the other part of it is the big part. This is the monumentous challenge. That part isn't. How do we get people to care again, right? Because I don't think people care anymore. I think there's, and it's not even a generational thing, although it might be. I think there's just a number of people that want to go through life passing by people, not looking at them, not saying hello, getting on the elevator, ignoring the fact that there's other humans on the elevator next to you, and just minding their own business. And I happen to be one of them, honestly. In most of my life, I'll have some conversations, but I don't really get chummy with neighbors. I'm just like, hey, hi and bye, take care. I'm not that close, and so I'm part of the problem and part of the generation where we've become just a little bit more. I don't want to say isolated, but that's me. I never really been that chummy with my neighbors. I have one really good neighbor where I live now, two, but one I'm just cordial with, and the other one I've been over their place like once or twice for a barbecue. But I keep a lot of distance, and I just and just because I do, not because I don't like them. I just happen to be that way, and I think there's a lot of people that are like that, and it seems to be the new trend, right? I think rude is the new normal, and maybe it's a New York thing, but how do we address that?
So that's really interesting that you asked me that question. I was out with my son, who's a doctor, and he asked me the same thing. He's 32, and he said, Mom, we're going out shopping and being with people, but a lot of the young kids, they don't know that this is fun. They don't know that it's fun to go out and physically go do things. And so he asked me, Mom, how can you get people motivated that are young and don't know the difference, how it is? And so I don't know if you saw the movie Barbie. You probably didn't. But I said to him, I said, movies are one way to really get kids motivated. And Barbie did it. Barbie had, if you saw it, it was really, I thought it was sort of ironic because they had big words like cognitive dissonance, and they had existential crisis. I mean, big words like that. And they had, it just had a really good message, not just for the young girls, for the men, about being more empathetic, even with the people in the movie. So that's one way. The other is we need to model the behavior. So just like you were saying, you're so busy. We ourselves need to take time and model the behavior that we want exhibited, because there is a decrease in empathy. They've already done studies on that. And it's because we're inundated. We're 24/7. Rich, we are social media, gaming, news. It doesn't turn off. And so we turn off and then we disconnect. And so that's what's happening.
Folks, we're on with Jill Robin Payne. She says we need to get back to community. I agree with her, and I'm hoping that the Barbie movie might be the fix for me. I'm just kidding. But we do need to work on that. If you want to join us, the phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. So colleges are making Gen Z mental health crises worse than they need to be by adding trigger warnings. This is according to the New York Post. Colleges are being rocked by an unprecedented mental health crisis. Suicides across American campuses now exceed 1,000 per year, making them the second leading cause of death for college students. Nearly 3 in 4 student affairs officials say that campus mental health has worsened in the last year. And according to the article here, it says it's no wonder that these kids are taking in hordes of depressed 18 to 22-year-olds, and they're so desperate to do something about it. But there's a big problem. Administrators are pandering to attempts to protect students' mental well-being and are often making matters worse by creating safe spaces, trigger warnings, and speech codes, which are regular strategies that they use to, quote-unquote, protect students from harm. Now, my question here is, in doing this, are we creating young people that are softer? Should we be trying to create people that are more resilient, or is that just me being a mean Gen Xer? Jill Robin Payne.
And I'm going to agree with you. There's it's where when you're raising a kid, you want to teach them how to do things so that they can be independent. So if I am raising a child and I tie his shoe and I keep tying his shoe and he's 18 years old and he goes, Mom, I want to tie my shoe. No, honey, I know best. I'm going to tie your shoe. Then I kick him out to the curb at 18. He's not going to know how to tie his shoe. So what's happening here is you don't really want to coddle people. You want to know that they're, give them support. Do what I do when my clients come in. We focus on their strengths. I focus on what they succeed in, the positives in them, and then we build on that. And so what you focus on, you bring about. So if I say to you, oh, you poor thing, I don't think you're strong enough to do this. You're very fragile. Then you're going to believe those words. It's called self-fulfilling prophecy. You can look it up. They've done studies on it. If I say that person's a booger, he's going to be a booger. So you want to, you want to speak it into existence. It's even in the Bible, speak it, therefore it is. So we really need to watch our words. And that's another thing with social media. People are just talking and not really listening to what they're saying out there. And I think we need to be more cognizant of what we say. I need to do that with my husband. I need to be more cognizant when I talk to him. And so
when you're talking about what you're seeing on social media, give us an example.
Well, I see a lot of information like narcissistic behavior, and so people may have some narcissistic tendencies, doesn't mean they're a narcissist. And so they go to extremes, I see, on social media, and you can't even really be yourself. So I'm on it. And I like to say, hi, welcome to my office. No, you can't do that. You just get right down to the point, and you're really not yourself on social media. And so it's teaching kids to not be human. It's just to get things done quickly, get right to the point. Well, that's not life. Life is you do small talk, you get to know people, it takes time. And so on social media, it's teaching people, no, we don't have time. You've got to get right here, and it's got to be this. And if I live like that, I'm going to get anxious. And I think it's just promoting people to not know really how to act when they're with people in real life.
I got one of these social media things that you're talking about. Somebody sent it to me today.
Right.
And it was as a joke, but it's real. And listen to this. It says, how to be a mom in 2023. Make sure your children's academic, emotional, psychological, mental, spiritual, physical, nutritional, and social needs are met while being careful not to overstimulate, underestimate, improperly medicate, helicopter, or neglect them in a screen-free, processed foods-free, plastic-free, body-positive, socially conscious, egalitarian, but also authoritative, nurturing but fostering of independent manner, gently but not overly permissive, pesticide-free, two-story multilingual home, preferably in a cul-de-sac with a backyard, and don't forget the coconut oil. And I thought, and that's the internet, right? That's social media. I think that's exactly what you're saying, where people are getting all this information. They're trying to be all things to all people. And then young people see that. And even I see that. I see stuff all the time with these shrinks that are on social media. And some of them make a ton of sense. And then there's others that aren't shrinks that think they are, and they're just giving out all this life advice on relationships and everything else. And people start to self-diagnose based on all of this stuff. And we did a story on this recently about people diagnosing themselves or others off of TikTok. And I thought, that's a problem.
That is a problem. I had a client of mine, well, I shouldn't say that. Anyway, people will tell me that their significant others will send them things that are from TikTok or Instagram, and 50% of it is okay, and the other 50% of it is, what are they talking about? But just you telling me what you just said to me stressed me out, and I'm a mom. I'm thinking, what you just said put pressure on me, and that's what's going on. I don't know if you remember Twiggy, But Twiggy was
Yeah.
nice and skinny. Okay, she was nice and skinny, and she put pressure on the little kids to be skinny. But she wasn't all over the internet 24/7. If I had
Right.
to look at her 24/7, that would get me to feel insignificant. It would affect me in some way. And so that's what's going on.
I might just want to buy her a meal and think she's hungry.
She was awful skinny when she.
Jill Robin Payne, stand by. We're going to take a quick pause here. Then we're going to come back. We've got some calls that need to be addressed by our therapist in residence, Jill Robin Payne. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with Jill Robin Payne. Our phone number is 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Chuck in Rochester, Minnesota, KROC. Chuck, go right ahead, quickly.
Hey, I was just calling to say I went to school for child psychology. I went and got a degree focused on early childhood development.
Mm-hmm.
And right before I went and got to a point where I could start going and actually helping kids, they changed the rules in Minnesota. So I needed to have a master's degree to go and do a job that was only going to pay me $20,000 a year.
Wow. You know, Chuck, this has been a thing I've seen for years. And even people with master's degrees, like in social work, MSWs, they've historically been poorly paid. And it's unfortunate, but that's the case. Now, Jill Robin Payne, in the time that we have remaining,
yeah,
I want you to give Chuck some advice and to let everybody know how they can follow you and keep up to speed with everything you're doing.
Oh, okay. For Chuck, if you have a master's and then you get your license, you can go ahead and start your own practice and work for somebody else, contract with them as you're starting your own practice, and you will make more money than $20,000 a year. As for me, I will be on Spectrum News in Austin, October 6th at 9 a.m., talking about my Bempathy book. And you can find me online at just Jill Robin Payne or JillRobinPayne.com.
Now, Jill Robin Payne, tell everybody how they can get a copy of your book.
Oh, well, just go to Amazon and just put Bempathy, which is Banter with Empathy, and it'll come up, and they can get it.
All right. Well, thank you, Chuck. And Jill Robin Payne, I want to thank you because you always do such a great job. And I always glean a lot of things from our conversations. I always leave with like a little list of things where I go, oh, man, I got to do better here. Oh, I got to, as I'm here criticizing the colleges for coddling kids, I'm thinking, I wonder if I've done that to my kids. Do I have to be tougher? Maybe I was too tough. I don't know. Back to the leather couch for me. Jill Robin Payne, you're a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rich. Bye.
All right, take care. All right, folks, Open Phone America is coming up next. You know the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Keep it locked right here. Don't move a muscle. We're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, feel free to do so. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. The United Nations has pronounced the United States-Mexico border as the world's most deadliest crossing for migrants. Now, this, of course, comes on the heels of Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, saying, no, we've got everything under control. Listen to this.
Mr. Secretary, the mayor has somewhat clarified his comments, but not walked them back by any means. What's your response to those comments?
I would say the following. First and foremost, we're dealing with a broken immigration system, a fact about which everyone agrees. It is one of the rare things about which there's unanimity of views, and we need Congress to act.
Now, isn't it his job to fix the broken immigration system? Isn't he the Secretary of Homeland Security overseeing Customs and Border Patrol and United States Customs and Immigration Services, USCIS? Isn't that his job? I mean, the gall on this guy. Go ahead.
Number one. Number two, within that broken immigration system, we are challenged by an unprecedented level of displacement in the Western Hemisphere of historic proportions. We have responded with a model approach that has proven to work, which is to build lawful pathways for individuals to arrive in a safe and orderly way and to deliver consequences for those who don't meet them. We are working very closely with the city of New York. We sent an assessment team here that devised approximately 25 recommendations. We are executing on those recommendations. We will address this together.
A safe and orderly way. Well, the UN says this is the deadliest crossing ever. Tuesday, they were declared, the UN declared the U.S.-Mexico border as the most lethal land crossing in the world, adding another grim superlative to President Biden's immigration record. The International Organization for Migration, the United Nations immigration watchdog, they tallied 686 deaths and disappearances last year and said that's probably an undercount because many deaths go unreported. Of course, what are you going to do? Go to the cartel, the coyotes, and ask? So far this year, we're over 500 deaths already. Unbelievable. And there's hundreds that die in the Caribbean just trying to get to the U.S. This is absolute crazy talk from Alejandro Mayorkas. And again, I don't always take what the UN says very seriously. We've heard everything they had to say about COVID and masks, and now through lawsuits and testimony in Congress, we're finding out half of what they told us wasn't even true. Right? So the conspiracy theorists were right, and Alejandro Mayorkas is wrong. Anyway, I want to get to your calls in a moment. I just wanted to outline a couple of things that I want to talk about tonight before I forget. Of course, Joe El Baboso Biden has been green-lighted for an impeachment inquiry by Speaker McCarthy. Speaker of the House says we're going to look into what Joe El Baboso Biden has been doing. And I think we have a clip of that audio. Listen to this.
That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. It's exactly what we want to know. The answers.
The answers is what everybody wants to know, right? Everybody wants to know the answers. And we're going to get to that as well with your calls, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. I also want to do a little update on something we talked about yesterday, because yesterday we discussed how New Mexico Governor Lujan Grisham was suspending the Second Amendment in New Mexico, telling people they could not carry a concealed weapon. We're talking about law-abiding people that are, licensed gun owners, that they could not do this, and doing it for the sake of saying that they've had hundreds of deaths because of what they call a word that I don't believe in. I just want to put this out there. I don't believe in the word gun violence. It's not a word in my lexicon. Guns aren't violent. And I know most of you listening to this already know that. Guns don't do anything. It's people that do things, evil people that do things. And when we have these false narratives where it just becomes a common everyday word that they'll push through the media, they'll push through social media, they'll push through whatever means they can to make it seem like it's the evil gun. And then when I say something like it's not, it's people that kill people, not guns that kill people, they'll say, well, you know what? If those people couldn't get guns, they wouldn't kill people, right? Do you really believe that? Do you really think, there's a big city in every state, You know, you got New York City and New York, you got Newark, New Jersey and New Jersey, you got San Francisco. Do you think the people that are committing murders there, even for a fraction of a millisecond, go, oh, but you know what? It's illegal to use guns to kill people. You know, you're not allowed to do that. Do you think the bad guys give a damn about what laws we have? The only person getting hurt by these stupid laws are the innocent people that are going to be unarmed when a bad guy who has an illegal gun comes to get them. Or in the case of many school shooters, some psycho that was able to acquire a gun has a gun. And I as much as I have empathy for those things, there's no way in hell that I'll ever say I'm going to sacrifice my right to have a gun, to protect my family, to do what I've got to do, to protect myself from my government, because there's a psycho that misuses a firearm. Absolutely not. I'm sorry. That's not going to fix the problem, because bad people do bad things. And just because a bad person may have gotten through a mental health screening, or just because a bad person was able to buy a gun legally, doesn't change the fact that they're a bad person. That doesn't make me a bad person. Doesn't make you a bad person. It makes them a bad person. And again, I know I'm giving a Kamala Harris-like speech over here, but this is what happens. So we have an update on the Grisham thing as well. Now, let's go to the phones. Where do I want to go first? Right here. First caller up, Paul in Boise, Idaho, KBOI. Go right ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, Rich.
Yes, sir.
I think this impeachment inquiry has been a long time coming, and it's not just the monetary ones and giving special favors for money and the decisions that were made by Biden when he was vice president. But if you look at his administration and what's transpired since he's become president, there's a lot there that needs to be looked at, scrutiny-wise. And I agree with what you were talking about as far as Homeland Security and Mayorkas is concerned. That guy needs to be impeached. I don't know how many times I've seen him lie in front of Congress about how the border's closed and nobody's coming over the border. I don't know how many times I've heard him say that. And that's a start. But when it comes to the inquiry for Joe, they're going to have a little bit of work left to do, but I believe they're going to have what's necessary to follow through with what their inquiry is about. And that's giving special preferential treatment for money that is paid to the Biden crime family. I just, I grew up watching the Watergate on television when I was a 12-year-old kid. Like, I got off the school bus and Mom sat me down and said, "This is what we're doing for homework today. We're watching this." And I remember watching that in the 1970s, early 70s. And, it pains my heart to see a president, the man that's given all of us free peoples the opportunity to be free, but then to treat us the way he's treating us is beyond reproach. I can't believe that he's even attempted to get away with what he's gotten away with.
I'm with you, Paul. I can't believe that we've actually allowed this to go on as long as it has. And I'm glad you're bringing that up and you're providing some historical context here, because it's 100% right. Biden should have been impeached, in my opinion, in his first year because of what he did at the border. And the fact that now the United Nations is saying that we have the most deadly border crossing on the planet. If we can't pay attention to that, the fact that people are dying at the border and there's a whole lot of trafficking of women and children, I mean, what are we paying attention to? How do we just turn a blind eye to that time and again? That alone should be the basis for his impeachment. Thank you, Paul, in Boise, Idaho, KBOI. Folks, we're going to continue with your calls straight ahead. And remember, the topics that we're going to discuss tonight, not only the impeachment, but the New Mexico governor, they've turned on her. The cop said, we're not doing it. The mayor said, we're not doing it. Nobody's enforcing her silly law. There was actually a big protest there, and everybody was packing heat. So kudos to the New Mexicans for standing up to their tyrannical, crazy governor. And, of course, there's a couple of other stories that I want to jump into. So give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The panel contends that it has evidence that Dr. Anthony Fauci tried to curb discussion that a lab leak sparked the pandemic. Subcommittee Chairman Brad Wenstrup obtained messages from Fauci Deputy David Morins, writing, quote, Tony doesn't want his fingerprints on origin stories.
What would be the reason for not having a scientific debate, for wanting to squash one of the potential theories that exist?
Fauci has historically pushed back against the lab leak theory.
The evidence very strongly points to this being a natural occurrence of a jump from an animal species to a human.
But other scientists accuse Fauci of scientific spin.
The conspiracy here really was on the other side, which was to really get a single narrative to support the spillover event.
Raul Ruiz, the top Democrat on the COVID panel, says the GOP wants to, quote, vilify Dr. Fauci. Wenstrup says Morins, Fauci's deputy, used his private email to duck Freedom of Information requests. Other Democrats defend Fauci.
Tony's fingerprints aren't on this. What I'm concerned about is that information is being cherry-picked to be used to go after somebody.
Dr. Christian Anderson communicated with Fauci in January 2020 that the signature of the virus made him wonder if it was man-made. But Anderson missed a deadline to comply with a subpoena for information. Wenstrup accused Fauci of undercutting the lab leak theory because the U.S. funded research in Wuhan. Fauci says there was a small grant to study bats in China, but told Fox in January that research would be, quote, impossible to trigger a pandemic.
So there you go. There's a report from Fox News on the origins of COVID. And you've got these whistleblower right now says that CIA officials were paid to change the view that COVID originated in a Wuhan lab. The allegations, which stemmed from a seemingly credible source, that's according to a quote here, require Congress to investigate how the CIA handled its investigation of COVID's origins. And that's according to lawmakers. So the question is, why? Why did we do this? Why did Tony Fauci, the Fauci, as I like to call him, why did he not want his fingerprints on this? And I could explain it pretty quickly. Senator Rand Paul has alluded to this. This has been discovered by Matt Gaetz and others in congressional and Senate committee hearings. Fauci's organization, I forget the exact name, but the Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases or whatever it is, they funded a grant to a third party called Echo Health Alliance for the sake of what they called gain of function research. And gain of function is basically making a virus more lethal than it can be so that you can figure out how it mutates and, according to their theory, how it mutates and how it becomes treatable once it mutates, right? That's the theory. So it's like, well, I got to figure out how to deal with dead people, so I got to kill you, that type of thing. So they did this gain of function research there's several people in the scientific community who said we shouldn't even do gain of function research because it really doesn't serve a purpose. And if in the wrong hands, you've now made a superbug or a super virus that could potentially be used as a weapon. So they don't think it's a good idea. And we've had doctors on this program talk about that. Anyway, fast forward. Here we are. So Fauci gives the money to Echo Health Alliance. Echo Health Alliance gives it to the Wuhan Institute, where they create this virus, and that the virus accidentally gets out. And I believe the accidentally part. I really do. So now we have Fauci saying, well, I don't want my fingerprints on that. Of course he doesn't want that, because they'd say, well, who paid for this stuff, and why were we paying millions of dollars to make a coronavirus more lethal? And oh, snap, it got out. Oh, snap, it killed millions. Right? Then we have the story that we just talked about in the 11 o'clock hour, our second hour of the program, where a federal court has now ruled that the government very likely violated the First Amendment rights of Americans by coercing social media companies to censor content that said exactly what I'm saying right now. And I was saying it back then. So this is, to me, a massive cover-up, right? A massive cover-up where we paid to create this virus that killed medio mundo, right? Half the world. And now the top doc, crazy mad scientist, Dr. Fauci, he decides he doesn't want anything to do with it. He retires. He thinks everything's going to go away, and it likely will. He's not going to go to jail for anything. So what happens now? If anything, maybe we can just learn more of the truth as it's trickling out now. And it's fascinating to see this happen. Makes all those great memes that I see on Instagram where they say, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a connect the dotter or something like that. And, they make a lot of sense, right? They make a lot of sense. Anyway, let's hit the phones on this one. Let's go to Sedona, Arizona. Check in with Pat, listening on Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Pat, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Great show. Man, talk about connecting the dots. You did it. The CIA paid off those 6 men that got little money under the table, as you might say, or you can say it many different ways. Oh, man, I tell you what, how many FBI agents have been paid off? How many of the DOJ have been paid off? Congress, they've been paid off. Senate, they've been paid off. I mean, it's money. And these people don't understand one thing. If they kill us all, which they're trying like hell to do.
You're right, Pat. The music means they're kicking us out, brother, but you're hitting the nail on the head, brother. Folks, give us a call if you want to join the convo. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. More to come straight ahead. We're going to get into the rest of this and a couple of other things. Don't move a muscle.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? But right. You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. So Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, she suspended the right to carry firearms in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And nobody took it well. Nobody. There's not a single person, maybe her and a few of her friends. But everybody was up in arms about this. And why? Because the police powers that one is given, and under the guise that she's using, it's saying this is a health crisis, saying that law-abiding citizens not being able to carry their guns, and they have open carry in this state. So, these are people that are historically have been carrying guns all over New Mexico. Her suggestion is that by taking guns away from law-abiding citizens, that somehow that's going to stop the gang violence and the shooting that's killing children that are involved in gang shootings. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. But she stuck to her guns on this, and we played all that stuff yesterday. If you missed that show, go check it out, Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com, and you can listen to the whole show. But she says, it's not for the police to tell me what's constitutional or not. Listen to this.
And it's not for police to tell me what's constitutional or not. They haven't supported one,
not one gun violence effort in the state of New Mexico, including domestic violence protections, universal background checks.
Well, that's because guns aren't violent, ma'am. And police typically don't arrest guns, they arrest bad people. But John Allen, he's the sheriff of Bernalillo County, or is that Bernalillo? I don't know. I'm not sure on the pronunciation. But he had a press conference yesterday, and he responded to Governor Lujan Grisham's gun ban. Listen to this.
Let me be clear. I hold my standards high, and I do not or never will hedge on what is right. And I take my oath seriously. In reference to concealed carry and open carry, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office will not enforce this segment of the order. While I understand the urgency, the temporary ban challenges the foundations of our Constitution, but most importantly, it is unconstitutional. My oath was to protect the Constitution, and that is what I will do. The governor made it clear in her press conference. She knew we as law enforcement did not agree with the order, and as a result, this was solely her decision. Other than this ban being unconstitutional, here are other reasons why I will not enforce the order. One, what many forget, is I have enough violence here in Bernalillo County. I do not want to have political violence towards my deputies or here in Bernalillo County. My job is to keep the peace and to make sure that the citizens of Bernalillo County are safe, and I do not believe that this order will help me do so. I'm a law enforcement professional. This order will not do anything to curb gun violence other than punish law-abiding citizens from their constitutional right to self-defense.
Well, he's 100% right. And I mean, anybody on the math doesn't add up. You can't stop good people from doing anything and think it's going to affect bad people somewhere. Stop the bad people. What she should do is get more cops, put more cops on the street, fight the war, right? Go after the bad guys. Absolutely crazy. Let's go to the phones on this. 833-482-5337, 8334-VALDEZ. Let's go to Monica calling from Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA. Monica, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi, Rich. Thank you for having me. This is my first time calling in on your show, but
oh, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just as far as the guns, a gun is just a tool. A gun does not have a brain, right? It kind of takes me to like somebody, a nut goes loose in the steering wheel in a vehicle and it crashes. Well, was it the nut in the wheel or was it the nut behind the wheel, right?
Right.
Well, yeah. So that is about it. When you were talking about gun violence and whatnot, it set me off, and it's not the gun's fault. Guns are just tools.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, Monica. And this is such a simplistic idea. And I'm sure those that criticize me will say, well, that's because you're a simpleton and you can't see the nuance. No, I see your nuance. It's BS. There's no nuance. This country was founded and we had a constitutional convention and we have the Constitution. The rights are inalienable and they come from God. They're natural rights. They don't come from the government. I give this speech so often, but the Constitution is how we limit the government to protect our liberty, not the liberty that's granted to us by the government. And it seems like this fundamental lesson is constantly being challenged by political tyrants like this Governor Grisham that think that they can create whatever they want to do. And honestly, I don't even think she's doing this for altruism. I think she's doing this for just political power. She wants to say, I stopped violence for 30 days or I stopped people from carrying guns. Those people aren't killing people. The bad guys that are out there are committing gang violence because gangs are violent. They're not going to listen to her silly order. Not even the cops are listening to her silly order. People were in the streets, all open carrying. I'm looking at the footage here on KOB Channel 4. Gun owners rallied in Old Town to protest a public health order. Imagine that, a public health order that says you can't carry a gun. What in the world is going on here? I mean, there's already laws preventing people that aren't allowed to carry guns from carrying guns. You know, if they use stop and frisk, if that were still a thing, that would help in a place like Albuquerque. It really, really would. Nobody wants to see children get gunned down by a gang, get caught in a crossfire. You need more cops. You need to fix this at the neighborhood level. You need a ceasefire. You need to talk to the gang leaders and say, hey, listen, we got to stop killing people. Figure out what's going on. Cut a deal. They do it in big cities all the time. But telling people that are living in a war zone that they can't carry a gun, which is their right, is absolute insanity. Monica, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. We're going to continue with the rest of your calls and the rest of our stories straight ahead. Give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Boy, it's a sad day in America when Americans vote on what is the best country in the world, and they don't pick the United States. Well, according to U.S. News and World Report, the U.S. didn't even come in second. Americans have ranked Britain the best country in the world. The outlet surveyed 17,000 respondents from 36 nations and broke down the data to see how many Americans alone ranked these countries. Behind Great Britain for best country is very picturesque New Zealand, this is according to the New York Post, followed by the USA, finally in third place. Number 4 was Australia, and Sweden was in 5th place, followed by Canada, Japan, France, Switzerland, and Germany, which just made the list at number 10. So U.S. is number 3, according to U.S. News and World Report, and these are Americans, according to their survey, saying that Great Britain and New Zealand are number 1 and 2. I haven't been to either, so I'm not going to weigh in on this, but I think it's pretty crazy. Let's see. Let's see what you guys think. And I want to get to the other topics that we have as well. So let us continue with our calls. Let's see. Where do we go here? Where do we go? We're going to go to Peggy, Akron, Ohio, WNIR. Peggy, go right ahead.
Hi. I am feeling bad about Dr. Fauci only because of things my doctor told me about him. She had so much respect for that man, and all she ever talked about was how brilliant he is. And then all this hatred toward him started bubbling up, and I felt terrible.
Yeah. Well, apparently I don't think it's hatred. I think it's criticism. And, you know, I don't think Dr. Rand Paul hates Dr. Fauci. I think he's called him out on a number of things that were just factually inaccurate. And apparently he's just a smooth talker that tells a good story, but's done a lot of bad things when nobody's looking. And he just doubles down on it when nobody else is looking. And this is the case with so many people, right? I think, 10 years ago, people had tons of respect for the Bush family, tons of respect for so many people involved in politics. And then you kind of start to see what did they do behind the scenes and what were they involved in and how did they handle this or how did they approach that? And when you look at it through the lens of scrutiny and you say, man, you're a heck of a nice guy or appear to be the heck of a nice guy. But when we look at what you've done to the country, for the people. It just doesn't add up. It seems like you're not a heck of a nice guy. It seems like you're a bad guy. And I think we're seeing the same thing unravel with Joe Biden. I think people for years thought he was just like a doting grandpa, this silly senator from Delaware, and he was harmless in many ways. And I think all of it was a ruse. I mean, it's clear as day now that the Washington Post is reporting that his son made $2.2 million one year, $2.4 million the next, strictly from Chinese and Ukrainian business interests. Meanwhile, you've got him debating Donald Trump during the presidential election of 2020, saying, my son has no business with China. The only person making money with China is this guy. And he points to Trump. So, I mean, clearly, whether you like Trump or not, Trump was right about everything that he said about Biden. And it's so right that today there's an impeachment inquiry going into Biden. And I think there should have been an impeachment inquiry for Fauci to have him removed from his office. But the problem is he's resigned. He's retired. And it just goes to show you that some people are so good at pulling the wool over one's eyes. Peggy.
Yeah, and I think back to the days when nobody was allowed to take pictures of a president who had polio.
Right. Imagine that, right? The beginning of the fake news and censorship. It's just remarkable how we've graduated from those days. Thank you for your call. I really appreciate it. I want to continue. Let us go to Mike, Jamestown, New York, WJTN. Go right ahead.
Hey, sir. Speaking about immigration, we hear everybody saying there's a broken immigration policy. Okay. Well, we all understand that. But we're not in any, I don't understand why nobody's saying this. It's a two-part problem, and it needs to be separated to be fixed. You have security first. Once you have security, there's the door. That's where you come in. If that's your house, you don't want people, you let them in when they come to the door, but you don't want them crawling through the windows.
Right. Exactly. And I think you're 100% right. They're sitting here. And again, this is more of that smoke and mirrors. The same thing Fauci did. The same thing this Governor Grisham is doing. She wants to talk about a very legitimate tragedy, that young people are dying at the hands of gangs that are shooting each other. And many of these young people are involved in the gangs. But irrespective, they could be wrong place, wrong time, playground shootouts, whatever the case is. They're all unfortunate. Nobody should be dying. And she takes this and turns it into a public health crisis and then says, hey, you can't have guns. Or you've got Fauci that says, no, I didn't send the money to the Wuhan Institute under oath. And of course, he didn't send the money to the Wuhan Institute. He sent it to Eco Health Alliance, who sent the money to the Wuhan Institute. It's the same trick that Joe Biden uses, saying, my son didn't get any money from China. No, it was because Biden Inc. gave it to Biden Corp, and Biden Corp gave it to Biden LLC, and Biden LLC gave it to Hunter, Enterprises, and they had 20 different shell corporations to cover up the money trail, right? Same shell game, same political sleight of hand. We see it time and again with mainly with the Democrats. That seems to be their MO. And they try to do everything as if they're everybody's best friend. They're here to help you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you. With very few people stopping to pause and say, maybe the best way to help me is to just let me make a lot of money and stop taking my money through taxes, right? I don't really need the government to survive. I would just like to keep my money, and I'd survive a lot better. Anyway, Mike, I appreciate your call. Very good insight and analysis. Jamestown, New York. Big shout out to you guys on WJTN. Folks, we're coming right back to your calls and more. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
Let's go to Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Check in with Paul. What's up, brother?
Hey, good evening, Rich. Rich, after hearing that sheriff tonight and listening to the sincerity in his voice, I was like a red flag law person, and I'd called and told you that. But now I'm changing my view a little bit after I seen what that governor tried to do, with people's guns. That's not right. And so you changed my mind, Rich. I'm no longer for those red flags. Yeah. And I do believe that people should have the right to protect themselves. And like I said, that sheriff that was speaking right there, I do really believe he was very sincere.
Me too.
I just don't think that, that takes away our Second Amendment right. So that's my belief now. So you changed my mind, Rich, you and your program and all your guests and everything. So I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I think that's important. If there's anything I could ever leave an impression on somebody, it's for them to just read the Constitution and take it incredibly seriously. Because the more we get involved with rhetoric, emotions, feelings, and all sorts of things that try to make sense of the Constitution and turn it into something it's not, the less liberty we'll have. That literally is the only document that comes between us and that crazy tyrannical governor, between us and a crazy tyrannical police chief, or anybody else, a crazy tyrannical ex-spouse that says, no, he's got guns, he's crazy, he said he's going to kill me, and then boom, there go your guns. I mean, it's just, everything can be abused, and this is why we have to focus on the rule, not the exception to the rule. Paul, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Let us go to John in Charleston, West Virginia, WCHS. John, quickly, go right ahead.
Okay, first I would like to, this is my thought. I think that the coronavirus was when they were digging down deep in the earth on the Marcellus Shale, which was stopped at Monongahela National State Forest due to endangered species. But now it's going to go back in and connect to the valley.
Digging in the earth is what caused coronavirus. I haven't seen that theory, but thank you, John. I appreciate it. We'll look into it. Dave in, where is this? Mexico, Missouri? KFRU. Go right ahead.
Oh, yeah. How you doing?
Quickly. You got one sentence. Go.
I just wanted to make a comment that I believe all the problems in our nation is due to a lot of the nation turning away from God.
Turning away from God. I think you're right, Dave. I appreciate the call. Call back soon. The music means they're kicking me out. Take care. Good night. God bless. Hasta la próxima. I am Rich Valdez. We'll do it again tomorrow. Keep it locked on this station. There's more programming right after me. Don't go anywhere.